Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the United States of America, because we got lots of very interesting statements. The administration of US President Donald Trump is discussing the possibility of sending thousands of troops and armored vehicles, including Stryker armored vehicles, to the border with Mexico to strengthen security measures, the Washington Post wrote on Saturday, citing sources in the Pentagon. According to the publication, the possibility of deploying up to 2,500 Marines and mechanized infantry brigade from the 1st Infantry Division in Colorado, as well as units of the 82nd Airborne Division from North Carolina, is being considered. So this is a very important statement. We see that the United States of America trying to do everything she can with the purpose to reduce their presence in Europe, to reduce their support of Europe, because now the United States of America have a reason why not to continue helping Ukraine. Furthermore, according to information we have, and during the president campaign, Donald Trump stated that he's going to fight with the narco cartels on the territory of Mexico. So once again, we need to understand that even if the United States of America is going to begin any operation against the narco cartels on the territory of Mexico, first of all, the United States of America needs to secure the borders. Without borders, there is no even a single chance to carry out this operation successfully, because we may see everything starting from refugees and ending with illegal crossing of borders with different terrorists or something like this. So the things that we can see right now is the preparation before possible escalation. The United States of America first is going to strengthen the borders, and then they will see what to do next. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. We got lots of very interesting and maybe even funny statements made by Zelensky. Vladimir Zelensky said that his decree on the impossibility of negotiations with Vladimir Putin concerns everyone except him. I have banned any political figures in Ukraine from holding any negotiations with the Russian side. I am the leader of any negotiations. I have banned everyone else from holding them. That was stated by Zelensky. Very funny to hear this statement now, 3 years after this law was adopted, and why nobody didn't know about this before, or what is going on, what is happening. So Zelensky is trying to make everything he can, but not to change anything, not to change laws, and not to show that he is on the weak side. But obviously Russia will never accept this. Russia will demand the legal president of Ukraine and new elections, and then Russia will sign anything with just the legal president, but not with Zelensky himself. And most likely Zelensky will not be able to win possible elections on the territory of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in Transnistria. Most likely the Ukrainians managed to resolve the issues with electricity. According to information we have, Zelensky made a schema and he had a meeting with the president of Moldova. The schema is the following. Zelensky understands that most likely Russia sooner or later will destroy the entire energy facilities of Ukraine, and he will not be able to do anything with this. And the solution from his side is the following. Zelensky will provide Moldova coal mine for free. He will give the coal for free for Moldova. Moldova then will give this coal to the territory of Transnistria, to this state, unrecognized state. This unrecognized state will create energy, electricity, and this electricity will go to the territory of Ukraine. So of course this power station will not be able to, let's say, to provide and to support the entire Ukraine, but obviously this will help the Ukrainians at least at some parts of this state. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground, and today we are going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. According to information we have, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Velika Novosilka. This information this night between the 25th and the 26th of January was provided as by pro-Ukrainian sources. As you can see, they have adjusted their maps By also the same reports were published by pro-Russian resources and by neutral sources. So as for now, we are coloring the territory of Velika Novosilka as a contested area. Now we are waiting either for the report of Minister of Defense of Russian Federation or for another geolocation with the Russian flag somewhere in the northwestern part that can confirm control over the settlement, or maybe the Russians will publish both and the Minister of Defense report and the geolocation. Anyway, the battle for the settlement has ended. The Russians managed to establish complete control, and now the Ukrainians, and we think what the Russians are going to do next, because the Russians have at least two options. The first option for the armed force of Russian Federation is to move further in the northern direction with the purpose to attack the Ukrainians from the south and to connect both armies, those that of the group of forces east. This is the area of responsibilities of the group of forces east, with the group of forces south that are attacking in the western direction with the purpose of taking Cauldron, the Ukrainian positions, let's say in the Andriivka fortified area. Some military experts are saying that the Russians also can try to attack in the western direction with the purpose to outflank the city of Gulyai-Polye and to attack the settlement from behind. So now the Russians are free to make any choice, any decision, and obviously the Ukrainians most likely are not prepared for any development of further situation. Now let's discuss the situation in the Andriivka fortified area. As you can see, the map was adjusted in Russian favor. Let's compare the map between two dates. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 25th of January. The Russians just destroyed another pontoon bridge between the settlement of Constantinople and Ulakli. Ukrainians lost their logistics almost completely by the end of the 25th of January, and by the beginning of the 26th of January we have adjustments on map. And as you can see, according to these corrections, the Russians managed to answer the settlement of Andriivka from the northeast. This information was also confirmed by pro-Russian sources. We made the adjustments on map based on the video that was published by the Ukrainian side. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were after withdrawing the Russian soldiers on the territory of the northeastern part of the settlement of Andriivka, and based on this video we see how the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. Now it's clear what the Russians are going to do next. The main purpose, the task number one for the Russians, is to dig in deeper, of course, and the task number two is to begin advancing in the southern direction with the purpose to take under control at least this part of Andriivka. This will allow the Russians to cut the settlement in two, to force the Ukrainians to fall back in the direction of the western part of the settlement, and this maneuver will allow the Russians to collapse logistic and to cut the Ukrainians that are currently located in the eastern part of the settlement and in this dense network of the fortifications in Cauldron. So this will be something, this is good. The Russians are going to create another Cauldron. We see this. So once again, Russians moving in the south, cutting the settlement in two. We remember that during the previous days, the Russians made lots of attempts to improve their positions towards the settlement of Rozliv and towards the settlement of Constantinople. But even from this perspective, from this configuration, we see that the distance between the 8 Russian positions from the south to possible Russian positions in the settlement of Andriivka might be less than 4 kilometers, and this is already a Cauldron. Another Cauldron, and the Ukrainians that are located in the settlements of Ulakli, Dachne, and in these fields, these company strongholds would be caught in Cauldron. Obviously, we are not talking about thousands of Ukrainians, but several hundreds could be caught in Cauldron without any possibilities for evacuation. So we see that the situation for the Ukrainians is very difficult. The main thing is that they can't, they're like escaping one Cauldron into another Cauldron. I'll just remind you that the first Cauldron appeared on the territory of Ugledar, and after the Battle of Ugledar there were up to 4 or 5 cauldrons in a row. So the Ukrainians are leaving one cauldron and they're entering another one, they're leaving another one and they're entering more cauldrons. So the situation for them is very complicated, and obviously this situation leads to significant losses from the Ukrainian side. As for the Dnipro direction, during the previous 24 hours, as you can see, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take under control several several villages, several tree lines and fields further in the western direction. According to information we have, the Russians improved their positions in the vicinity of the settlement of Nadezhdinka, and according to pro-Russian sources, the village of Novosilka was captured by the Russians completely. Maybe today the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm this information. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. According to information we have, the Russians improved their positions along the tree line between Uspenovka and Novosilka. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians of the 59th Brigade were bombing and attacking the Russian forces in this area. Based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted their maps in Russian favor. So this is the situation in this area. Very interesting details are coming to us from the Pokrovsk, from the western flank of Pokrovsk. As you can see, we have adjusted the map in this area as well. The Russians during the first 24 hours managed to take under complete control the facilities to the west-northwest of Kotlina. This information was provided us by pro-Ukrainian sources, and furthermore, as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the northern direction from the settlement of Kotlina itself. In this video that was published by the Ukrainian side, we can see a number of FPV drone attacks on the edge Russian positions in this area. So the Russians continue improving their positions. This is very important. Now we see that the Russians are trying to outflank the mine of Pokrovsk and to dig in deeper between the city of Pokrovsk and the village of Sergeyevka. Now we see that the Russians are trying to get these railways. If the Russians are able to cut these railways, then the situation for the Ukrainians in the city is going to become critical. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Toretsk. Today, several independent Russian sources reported that Russian forces took Toretsk. The town is now under their control. So the Russians maybe will announce the control over the city of Toretsk today. Also, Minister of Defense of Russian Federation can do this. As for the geolocations today and yesterday, more precisely, the Ukrainian sources published the video of how they were FPV droning, how they were attacking the Russian units, Russian soldiers on the territory of the mine. So there were two explosions, two attacks, and both of them took place in this region. And based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. So now we see that Ukrainians control less than probably 1% of the settlement of Toretsk, and most likely, indeed, the battle finished yesterday. Today we will receive some, let's say, announcement from the Minister of Defense. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the southern Kupiansk direction. After a very short operational pause, the Ukrainians managed to regroup their forces, and they began sending more and more units and tanks in this area again, trying to defeat the Russians on the Ukrainian side of the river of Zherebets and to force the Russians to fall back. We see that the situation for the Ukrainians is very critical. They are forced to suffer significant losses, and we see that indeed the Russians managed to dig in deeper, and we see that no matter what the Ukrainians are doing, they can't force the Russians to fall back. Anyway, the situation is very difficult for the Ukrainians, and after these attacks are repelled by the Russians, then most likely the Russians will begin their own counterattacks in the same area. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.